Hello, friends. Matthew Zachary here. You know, you've been told that the American healthcare system is broken. It isn't. It's working exactly as designed. Delays, denials, dehumanization. For decades, it's been profits over patients. You need proof? What's the first question they ask you? What insurance do you have? That tells you everything. And it isn't just big health insurance. It's the American Medical Association, it's labor unions, it's employers, politicians from both sides, and even the IRS. Yes, the IRS. They built it this way. And now it's time we, the patients, rig the system in our favor. Here's the prescription. We, the patients, understanding, navigating, and surviving America's healthcare nightmare. My new book by me, Matthew Zachary, a 30-year brain cancer survivor, the founder of Stupid Cancer, the host of this podcast, Out of Patients, and co-founder and CEO of We the Patients. Pick up your copy of We the Patients today wherever books are sold, or visit wethepatientsbook.com to learn more.
If the world were like a Sleep Number mattress, everything would adapt for your comfort. Your coffee would never get cold. Your flight would always be on time. And your mattress would always respond to you and your unique sleep needs. Sleep Number mattresses are designed to respond to your body and shift with your changing life, helping you fall asleep faster and stay asleep longer. To experience a whole new world of comfort, visit a Sleep Number store or go to sleepnumber.com. Sleep Number, to a good life sleep.
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!
Hello, friends. Welcome back to the show. My guest today is Brad Power. Brad is a lymphoma survivor and the founder of Cancer Patient Lab, where he's trying to solve a brutally modern reality. Cancer patients now need to become part patient, part researcher, part insurance expert, and part data analyst just to survive the American healthcare system. So what struck me in listening to him is how differently he thinks about advocacy. He's not selling inspiration. He's mapping, I guess he's a jargony nerd, infrastructure failure. We talk about why patients are increasingly trusting AI and peer support more than the healthcare institutions they're treated at. And why, just be your own advocate is a lot of bullshit. Yeah, Brad's like a systems guy. He doesn't think like other people. It's a brilliant way to approach how to solve problems. And at the end of the day, your insurance company invents a new reason to deny coverage. Why not try to fight back the Brad way? My name is Matthew Zachary, and this is Out of Patients. Let's get started. So, Brad Power, welcome to the show.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Did you realize your last name was Power before you became a badass?
Actually, I was using when I was doing consulting before my cancer diagnosis. I had a Tumblr site. Remember Tumblr?
Tumblr.
And it was Process Power. Process Power is still out there probably somewhere on the web.
Tumblr. That was like with Dig and Delicious and MySpace. God,
it was a big deal at the time. Blogging was a new thing.
Before the internet was the internet.
Not quite that, but...
Well, so you were one of the few that were actually doing that back in the 2000s. You and Dave DeBroncart, pretty much were out there.
Well, I can't. No, Dave, e-patient Dave was well ahead of me, and I was definitely behind him in that, just because of when I was diagnosed and everything. My journalistic claim to fame was I was writing articles for the Harvard Business Review.
Yeah, my old job. No small task, right? Easy breezy.
Yeah.
How'd you land that though?
It's actually a long story. I'll try to keep it short. In the consulting firm that I worked with at the time, getting an article in the Harvard Business Review was like, you could put it on your epitaph, you could die, you can go to heaven. You've reached the pinnacle.
That's it. Gets no better.
It gets no better. And so I had always, been floating ideas, and it was right at the point where they started doing online. And so the journal itself is like 7 to 10 page article, 6 months of review. It's like writing a book, which you would relate to, I'm sure. And then they went online, and now they had much more content, much shorter, maybe a page and a half. And it was in that when they had there was more capacity, there was more shelf space. They let in learners like me to get started.
HBR, by the way, I've never said this. I've never had reason to say this. Kind of got me started in nonprofits. This was at the time where I was with Livestrong, getting incubated, learning, oh my God, there's people here that are like me instead of a drift in the 90s. And one of my old bosses, because I was working at an ad agency, that's like a plan B. I hated the job, but I had to do it because I couldn't be a pianist. And I was really interested in like we used to call it cause marketing. Cause marketing was when brands, like when the worst version is like when they made pink M&Ms and they made you think I was actually helping anyone with breast cancer. But the godmother of cause marketing is a woman named Carol Cohn. Carol was this luminary. She invented the pink ribbons. She brought everything to market with Estee Lauder. And she was an HBR, like repeat offender. So my old boss, Larry's like, you should be reading Carol's pieces on HBR. I'm like, what the hell is HBR? So I learned so much from her writings and gained such respect for the institution of HBR. I've been drinking their Kool-Aid ever since. So funny you mentioned that because I'm a disciple of HBR.
There you go.
Taught me all I needed to know about building a brand that was attached to anger, that was populist, that had a cause behind it that gave people something to feel and not just do. So kudos to Carol Cohn. Thank you, HBR, for existing. And I'm glad you were there.
Yeah. Happy to be associated with a good brand.
Yeah. Loaded question. You get sick. No one plans to get sick. You're thrown into this store you want to shop in. You're a systems guy. You live and breathe in like this tactical, I need something at the end of the equal sign all the time. It's like the uncertainty equation the whole way through. Did you develop like some way to manage this statistically? Like there was no like Monday.com or CRMs for cancer back then. Where did you turn?
Well, to me, you look at the situation and to me, it looks like common sense. There are two things that I could leverage with once I got my cancer diagnosis. You're trying to figure out how to make heads and tails of this curveball that you've been thrown. One is decision support systems, which is very popular now with AI. Like what decisions are we trying to make and how do you make them? And who makes them and who has the power in the equation? And the other is process reengineering. Like we have work and we do work and we can use technology to do the work, but who's the customer is always important. Who's the customer? And you can look at a lot of what happens in healthcare today, and the customer is the doctor, the hospital, the pharmaceutical company, the payer. Seldom is it the patient. A lot of people give lip service to the patient, but they don't actually start as you would in the kind of work I did in process reengineering, which is a deep understanding of the customer, that is the patient or caregiver, and what they need and when they need it and how they need it. And a lot of it, again, is decision support. What test should I get? What treatment should I get? Should I consider a clinical trial? What about health and wellness? What about mental health?
Wait, so where along this way did you realize that every cancer patient needs a PhD in fuckery to get through anything?
Yeah. Well, I just was solving it for myself, I think is probably the honest way to say it.
Yeah, but now you've been giving back through this experience by other people. Is it... we don't disagree on much. And I would disagree is the wrong word. It's the approach. Because I come at it as like this crazy Jewish cynic that says you shouldn't need a PhD to get less fucked when things happen because you didn't go to cancer college to get sick 10 years later and know what to do. But on the other side, be your own advocate is kind of a nice idea, but does everyone have the capacity to know what that actually means?
Well, that's why we formed the Cancer Patient Lab, was to show people what it would look like. We showcase role models, people that do take an active role in their care, and what it looks like when they do, and that they get better outcomes. We're obviously going to try and bias things to where people who engage, who actively understand, put their finger on the scale, push for things, get better outcomes.
Well, it's pretty obvious that if you happen to know what to do, you're better off. And odds are, yes, you'll get what you want. You'll know how to appeal something. You could fight for this. And I feel like the quote is like, the revolution happens when survivors decide their own terms, right? Like our outcomes are ours to decide. But that's just so few and far between. I'm at the point now, and we're going to talk about my book, because the whole book is this cynical, dark take on why we're here. The very fact that you have to exist to do this in the first place is evidence of failure of the system writ large.
Agreed. In simple terms, again, you and I kind of spent a lot of time with people that have been mal-served by the system. And we have so many anecdotes and stories of people that have not gotten good results, have not been steered, have not been diagnosed, have not gotten steered to things that could help them the best. And sometimes, probably more often than not, that's based on the incentives in the system. So you start to understand that, because they're good people. You know, the doctors are not trying to hurt people.
No.
So it's good people. So why is it? What is it about the system? So it's systems thinking, I think, that enters, which is another thing that I bring to it, to try to understand the motivations, the incentives, why people are behaving the way they are, what are the norms, what have you, that cause bad outcomes for patients.
Yeah, I hear systems thinking with the part of my brain that has that nerd gene in it. And I think coming from us, and I don't like to overuse the word victims, but I believe the system is built this way to fuck with us just so we don't know what to do. And that's how they make money on our ignorance, even though we're not planning to be ignorant about it. But when I hear like healthcare executives and, you know, the insurance industry and the PBM world laying claim to, oh, healthcare is not broken, it's just a systems issue, I want to punch them in the face, because that's bullshit that they say it that way at our expense.
I worked with Blue Cross Blue Shield in New Jersey, and I saw the incentives they have to basically run a good factory and report good results to the CEO. I could go into this story, but their service is bad, and their dashboards for what was showing the performance of their services said everything's good. And the CEO is saying, I'm getting these letters from members that says that things aren't going well and they're having bad experiences. Like, how does that reconcile with this report you're giving me that says everything's up and to the right and green and wonderful?
Yeah.
And so I understood it there. You can understand it in a hospital environment where people are trying to optimize for efficiency, profitability, volume. That's why we have, brief meetings with doctors and so on. It's a large factory that's trying to operate efficiently and achieve operational excellence, but it's at a population level, and you and I are unique.
We are unique in the sense, but I feel like we keep normalizing the fact that patients have to have PhDs, which just gives the system even more leverage to take advantage of us.
There is information asymmetry. Doctors know a lot more than we do, and we sort of would naturally defer to people that are a lot smarter than we are. I'd like to, get into AI and the disruptive force that it's having. And as you know, we're working with some of the services that would provide that to patients so that they can create a more level playing field so that they can more actively participate in their care. We believe that engaged patients get better outcomes. In order to do that, you need a certain level of knowledge to understand what some of the options are, and then to put your finger on the scale of ones you think, like, what about this? What about that? But AI is providing that opening.
We can discuss my Skynet theory of the destruction of mankind in the second half of the show.
Okay.
I'm pro Hippocrates, and I want to believe, and I genuinely believe, that everyone that chooses to go into medicine wants to live that Hippocratic life. And working in the burnout community, and I'm in a documentary now called Suck It Up Buttercup, which discusses how private equity is destroying rural health, and health insurance companies, to your point, are squeezing doctors into this industrial revolution factory line, and they're killing themselves, and they're watching their colleagues kill themselves. In this moral injury conversation, it's less about blaming doctors in any way, shape, or form. Yes, there's human error, which is a separate conversation. But if you're in there for 7 minutes and you need to have a real conversation with these people, but they're on like the clock, and you can't have Hippocrates in those experiences with these humans who are trying to help you, how does that help anyone when insurance is looking at like, oh, we didn't know this was terrible? Bullshit. You know this is terrible. That's my cynic.
Yeah. I think there's a lot in there. I'll just tease apart.
Unpack all of that.
I'll tease apart a couple parts of that. The Hippocratic Oath is do no harm. And do no harm is going to steer you towards conservatism. Conservatism is going to mean let's use the things that we've used for a long time, the tried and true. Mm-hmm. the guidelines, the standards. And the problem with those is they're done at population at that level, and you and I are different. So there's that part of the Hippocratic Oath. I think, again, I have family and friends that have been attracted to careers in healthcare. And I would say in general, they're people that want to help people. So there's that part, which is a very positive thing. So there's that part of healthcare, which is these are people that are, I mean, the nurses that have supported me they have my back. They very much are looking out for my best interests. And that, I think, runs through the system as well. So it's kind of teasing out some of those different forces and figuring out where they net out when it comes to an individual and their experience. You can have a great experience if you fall inside the standard of care and you fit that formula. You can have a bad experience if you happen to not. Again, I tell stories from my personal experience of when I was diagnosed with lymphoma, there's a standard course of chemotherapy you get. Today, you would increasingly be potentially steered towards something like CAR T, which I eventually got. And it's much more effective. And a lot of the strategies that are implicit in the healthcare system but are not often spoken are things like maximum tolerated dose until failure, single drugs, not drug combinations, and things that, particularly chemotherapy, because it's we have more experience with it, tends to be the first line therapy. But the chemotherapy carpet bombs your immune system. So then if you want to try an immunotherapy, oh, wait a minute, your immune system is hobbled at that point. So maybe you should bring that immunotherapy forward. Things like that are what are best for people is not the way the system has moved because of that conservatism. Because they're trying to try it and true first.
But don't you feel at this point CAR T's been de-risked in the mindset of Hippocrates, where doctors understand that this is likely better for you at this point and you shouldn't fail?
There's another syndrome which I observe, which is that doctors feel like they're stewards of the economics of the healthcare system. And even though you maybe could get a test that might or might not give you some information, even though you could get CAR T, which, by the way, costs several $100,000,
right,
versus the chemotherapy. Oh, and by the way, there might be profit incentives for which gives more profit to the hospital, the chemotherapy or the CAR T, et cetera. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes in those decisions that are somewhat to do with economics and somewhat to do, again, with this, where is it in the life cycle of doctors like things that we have 10 years of experience, and if you have a side effect, we know how to deal with that side effect.
Right, but so where does patient autonomy live in that space? Because shouldn't you have the right to know the choices in front of you and have that discussion with your physician to give them an objective opinion on, I want this, I don't care, versus I don't care what you think?
Yeah. So we believe in arming patients with information they can take to their medical team. And we've had some deep discussions recently on our webinars on looking at a patient can get all armed up with AI analysis. What question should I ask my doctor? What about this test? What about this treatment? And they could easily fill that 20-minute slot that they have with that doctor. They could fill 80% of it with the stuff that's on the top of their mind that they want to cover. The doctor has a vision of that 20-minute session where they fill 80% of the conversation. And so now you've got a little bit of competition. And one of the things we discussed was make sure you as a patient probably want to hear what that doctor has to say. So you probably want to make sure that you don't dominate. So you fill up all the space with your questions and try to be solicitous of whatever might be the things that they want to say as well. So it's a balancing act between an armed patient with a lot of information and questions and a doctor who has some ideas about what they should do.
Yeah, but I feel like now we're shoving how to win friends and influence people up every cancer patient's ass.
That is exactly right. And that's almost exactly the words that this person...
Almost exactly the
words that they use to say.
Not the ass part.
Not the ass, but yeah, they don't use your language. You're a little more provocative, to put it nicely. But it was the point that your doctor's a person too, and you as a patient, in order to effectively work with them, probably ought to think about them as like, how do you engage with them in a productive way? And thinking about the amount of time you're going to take airspace. For example, you could have, again, with AI, and I have this happen every day. You ask a question, you get 10 bullet points. And you say, narrow, and then I say, simplify that down to 3.
Yeah.
Right? So you only have this narrow window with a doctor. So how can you take the one question you want or the 2 and not have the 10 questions? That's part of when a patient is armed, they need to think about in this conversation how you want to balance that and take some responsibility for having a productive conversation, which means respecting the doctor as well.
Yeah, so I'm not throwing rocks at this because we're in the same mindset. But again, is it fair to shove Dale Carnegie up a cancer patient's ass when they're scared for their life and cannot be objective?
Yeah. Well, that's another fascinating thing about AI. You can say, I'm going to have this conversation with the doctor. How would you help me manage that conversation? Mm-hmm. It's amazing that it can help you do that. I just, over the weekend, I saw a article in the New York Times that said, it was an opinion piece. Dear doctors, why your patients are using ChatGPT? And my take, I'll summarize it from the way I heard it, it's because this sycophant aspect of the AIs is actually a positive thing. So you come to it with a thing like, I'm a lymphoma cancer patient and my white blood cell count is really low and I'm really concerned and I don't know what to do. You look at the response the AI comes back with, it's first of all, it validates that. Yes, you're right to be concerned about it. That's a legitimate concern. It happens to a lot of people. This is how you should think about it. This is why it's happening. These are things you might do about it. And here's some questions you can ask your doctor. It's amazing how it just goes like end to end, and it has a very nice package that it gives you on how to deal with your doctor with the information you gathered.
All right, let's take a quick break. I want to get back to, and we're going to get into Skynet in the next half of the show. We'll be right back.
Insurance isn't one size fits all. That's why drivers have enjoyed Progressive's Name Your Price tool for years now. With the Name Your Price tool, you tell them what you want to pay, and they'll show you options that fit your budget. So whether you're picking out your first policy or just looking for something that works better for you and your family, they make it easy to see your options. Visit Progressive.com. Find a rate that works for you with the Name Your Price tool. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
My concern over AI, obviously the Skynet question, because it really should be a do no evil. Like, I feel like we're back to where Google was, do no harm. Mm-hmm. Like they were on Hippocrates bullshit in the early 2000s. Mm-hmm. Who's watching the watchers when it comes to providing non-clinical guidance over AI?
So the first thing, remember I said that this is decision support.
Right.
So
it's a tool, not a solution.
There's that too. But the point I was going to make is if you are in a life-threatening disease decision, are you going to be worried about privacy and security, or are you going to be worried about getting the best answer possible?
Right. You just click the iTunes terms of service and you don't care about the consequences.
Exactly. So I tend to come from that. I tend to come from working with people who have life and death decisions to make. And you want to have my data? Fine, have all my data. Right. You want to get into my knickers? Have at it. Go for it. Because I'm hoping that some random person out in the world, they might be in England, they might be in Spain, they might be who knows where in China, they might have an idea for you. So I want to make my information and my privacy is not a concern. Right. It's a starting point. And what I've seen is that the people with privacy have very strong voices. And the reason that there's a HIPAA and the reason there are all these privacy and security concerns, to me, comes from a set of people that are very vocal and have skewed the system to solve a problem that some people worry about. And let's think about the persona of someone who worries about that. I have an employer. I don't want my employer to know that I have cancer. Or there's one gentleman in our community. He's a prostate cancer survivor. He doesn't want his clients to know, so he's disguised. So those exist, and I respect that people like that would want to keep things private, but that's not the population I'm typically dealing with, and that's not the concern that most people have. Most people have concern about surviving.
All right, that's a very, very valid point. You're willing to sacrifice this for that. Mm-hmm. Are you concerned, because this is just inevitable, that we're going to start seeing ads in AI? And who's to say that you're looking for non-clinical information, but then an ad for a drug company comes up, like one of the stupid TV ads, but an AI form that tells you to talk to your doctor about this? How is that going to skew everything?
I think it's a very valid concern. I think it's particularly true right now about OpenAI, who has said that they're going to start taking ads. And there's almost no way that they would not be going down a slippery slope, as Google did when you take ads, that then things get shown up in your feed, and Facebook does. And they're going to be creepy in many cases. Facebook has a very bad reputation because of that. Their popularity is 20 or 30%, of people.
Still better than Congress.
Yeah, but not great.
Yeah.
And so I think that risk exists, and it's a legitimate concern. We are in opencancer.ai, we're building that security into the system so that we will not sell the data on the back end. There won't be ads. And so there's what is the sustainable advantage if you're offering something, an AI-based service? And the thing that we anchor on is trust and trustworthiness. And so part of that is you would not do that. You would not take ads, because that obviously is going to have you be untrustworthy. And there are different sponsors or people you could partner with that would be more or less trustworthy. If you take money from a pharmaceutical company, it starts to look like, maybe, how am I not sure that you're skewing the results and the answers to that drug that they offer? And it can be the appearance of impropriety, not necessarily the reality of impropriety, but you have to be very thoughtful across the board about what creates trust and what creates trustworthiness. As you know, and because you're a populist, angry person, you know that trust is declining everywhere about everything.
Yes.
And so we are living in a very a trust deficit environment. I just made that up, but
you can own that, Mr. HBR.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Exactly.
That's your next article.
So people are having trouble finding trustworthy sources, and you really have to develop, I would say, almost like trust literacy. You can't just listen to every influencer that's recommending ivermectin. You have to.
Have you met our species?
Exactly. Exactly. I agree. But I think people have to, again, I think it's a form of literacy that they have to recognize what are the incentives, who's behind it, what are they trying to do, and what's the source? What's the source? And you can't trust everything you see on the internet.
This kind of goes back to my earliest days at Google, because I was part of the Google Health Initiative in the late 2000s. Somehow I found myself in a room with Eric Topol and Eric Schmidt and all these crazy, what am I doing here?
They needed a patient voice.
I was there with Doug Ullman, by the way. So I was in good company because he knew what he was doing, and I had no idea what the hell I was doing there. But that was the first time I ever heard about hacking, healthcare hacking. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it existed in the patient space at all beforehand, but I finally heard about, can we hack healthcare? Yep. And then you come around and build these hackathons, which, was that a modern day version of crowdsourcing?
It is the way we chose to define it.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So hacking in software people is like cleverness. It's creativity. Mm-hmm. It's a good thing. Hacking for most people, the average people, you sort of have this picture of somebody with a black hood and they're kind of shadowy.
Or the Matrix.
Yeah, you can't quite see their face, and it's kind of evil. So I took the positive connotation, and early on, I fell into running. Well, there was a friend, Bryce Olson. Did you know Bryce? You must
I know
have
Bryce.
Yeah. And so he told me, it was around Christmas one year, he said, Brad, I've run out of treatment options. I don't know what to do. I've hit a wall. And I said, well, we could run a hackathon for you. He said, let's do it. And so then I went, now I need to figure out what a hackathon is. And so I went to a friend, Pete Kane, and he told me about how he had, do you know Pete?
I do not.
Yeah. He runs a group called Research to the People, and he told me how he'd run some hackathons. And a hackathon that, as he ran it, was over a weekend. It was a bunch of people. They gave all this data, like a huge amount. They were bioinformaticians primarily, mostly, RNA-seq, detailed, whole genomic, very detailed information. And they had teams that would compete and try and figure out, what's the diagnosis? What is going on here? And what should this patient do? And I didn't want to run something over a weekend. This was during the pandemic. So we basically set it up similarly, but more along the lines of what I was used to, which is a weekly meeting where we had a Zoom call. And we went over the case, and we had 50 to 100 people figuring out what we should do for Bryce. What's his next treatment? What should he do? And it's amazing when you have a diverse group of people. Some people
But that's all pure trust. That's the thing. It's 100% trust, right?
Yeah, but I think people average out. I mean, if you have 50 or 100 people, a lonely, crazy person is probably going to get overwhelmed by the massa.
Yeah.
There's some trust. There's some, basically, there are two things that I said that came out of hackathons for people. They got more clarity on what their options were and what they should do, and they got more confidence in that decision. So it's often the case that there's no black and white answer to a question you have. It's not on and off, yes, no. It's like there are a bunch of factors and it's probabilistic, and a lot of people can come to different conclusions. And that's typically the complex decisions that cancer patients are facing when they're advanced.
This speaks to a lot of the stuff in the 2000s when they invented the word, like, what the hell was it called? Psychosocial well-being. Remember that?
Yeah.
It went from rehab to survivorship to psychosocial to mental health. That was the process of the George Carlinisms of cancer survivorship. And this is the first time we started to think about the community as consumer groups. Around the time Amazon book reviews and you were choosing things, not about how much the ad said on TV, but what the opinions were on Amazon. This sounds like a version of that. You're consumerifying you're shopping in a store you don't want to buy stuff in, you never wanted to be there, but you're getting that I will do the crowdsource narrative as if it's a product on Amazon.
Yeah. The modern version of that would be prediction markets.
Oh God, well, you're betting on like whether I'm going to make a left turn?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, there is some strength in numbers. The crowds are supposed to do better at making certain kinds of decisions.
Yep. One thing about you, and I really genuinely appreciate this, I just think it speaks to your pedigree. You are relentlessly consistent in everything you've ever talked about.
Often wrong, but never in doubt.
Yes, exactly. Relentlessly persistent. And I've listened to some of your podcasts, and you're like the anti-cancer advocate in the sense that there's a pragmatism, there's a literacy strategy, and they're like, you're systems guy. Like it's can we boil this down to something that just makes more sense in a very AI way of thinking about it? Again, it just goes back to where's the intervention that someone knows you exist? Because that's the missing piece here. Yeah. All this stuff is phenomenal. Open cancer AI. How do you get it into the hands of people that you don't want to wake up one day and find 20 people saying, I wished I knew this was there?
I just had lunch today with a friend, Sam Dix, and we were asking that exact same question. And for a long time, we felt that the content we have exceeds our ability, our distribution, basically awareness, marketing, because there's a lot of good information there. And we're particularly in a zone of things that are not in the standard of care. So they're things that are the things you don't know you should know. If you know, it's like there are things you know you should know, but there are things you don't know you should know.
Unknown unknowns. The Donald Rumsfeld crap. Yes.
Yes, the unknown unknowns. And that's the kind of stuff we want to get to people so that they can be aware of that. I'll give you a favorite example. Functional testing. Do you know what functional testing is?
I do not.
Okay, well, functional testing is where you take a biopsy, you take some fresh tissue, and you've got, let's say a dozen different drugs you're thinking about making a decision about getting. You can sprinkle those drugs on the tissue and decide which ones are the most effective. Now, if you know about functional if you have brain cancer and you're going to get a surgery, you're going to get some of that tissue removed, why wouldn't you do functional testing and figure out should you get which of the potential treatment options?
So this is not covered, probably.
Well, there's that too, but functional testing is off guideline because it is not widely used.
Right.
So you might have to fight to get it. That's where the advocacy comes in. You might have to pay out of pocket. You might have to get a GoFundMe, whatever. But it's a perfect example of the kind of thing that if you knew about it, you should ask for it. But if you don't know about it, you're never going to ask for it.
And how are you going to know to ask for it is the open question.
That's right. So you got to catch people before, like people get diagnosed. They're a cancer patient today and they weren't yesterday.
Right.
So and yesterday they weren't interested. Today they're interested. Mm-hmm. So how do you catch them? So I think in the future world, people are going to start going to AI. I mean, historically, they went Google, they went to WebMD, whatever. They went to internet sources. Most people do. I think 90% of people ask medical questions. And increasingly, I think they're going to turn to AI. And one would hope that here it will do, and at least our AI does this, and I assume most do, it's going to say, these are the questions you should ask your medical team. These are things you should know about.
You're writing a prompt to prompt people.
Yep.
And that is such a... It's like an Ouroboros. It never ends the questions that they don't know to even ask.
Well,
so how do you know what to tell them questions to even know to ask?
In the same way that we talked about, like you only, you have your 20-minute visit with the doctor and you only get to ask 3 questions or 2 questions or 1 question. You would hope that the AI would come up with functional testing as one of the things on that short list.
Are you able to program that into the Open Cancer AI platform?
It's really,
or is that biasing it?
No, it's not, programming it into is almost too tactically specific. What you do is the AI generates these things from a much more abstract level of specification. It's almost like there's a principle, and you could say, include the things that you don't know, that you should know about this point. You're just diagnosed, or you've just failed your treatment, or wherever you are in your journey. These are the things you don't know.
So wait,
you can program in, and it'll give you a set of prompts or a set of questions to ask about what those things are.
So I use ChatGPT to help me write shit and read shit and process shit, because I got a brain that's, well, my brain. It's its own planet at this point now. I guess are you telling the AI to pretend it is a cancer patient that doesn't know what to ask?
You're pretending that you're like more like, and I almost hesitate to say that, but like it's a doctor advising a patient.
Okay.
And as the doctor advising the patient, they should know about what they don't know. They probably don't know about. Like, first of all, you need to understand the disease at some level. Like, what is cancer? Why is that happening? What does the immune system have to do with, et cetera, et cetera?
Right.
The hallmarks of cancer, all that stuff in a Reader's Digest version. And then, what are your treatment options? What are your testing options? And what are the things you don't know? All
right, going back to HBR, as we approach a planet where we're going to have one man worth $1 trillion,
right?
You wrote about how too much profit can doom your company. Is there such a thing in America as too much profit?
That's a really interesting question. There's been some back and forth about that. I'm thinking what you've triggered for me is, do you remember Jack Welch at GE?
Yeah, sure.
So he was quoted as saying,
like the otherly Iacocca.
Yeah, well, he was also known as Neutron Jack because he did things like they're doing now, which is like laid off 10% of the people. And at the time he said, like, the business of a business is to make profit. End of story. There is no mission. There is no anything else. And in later years, he recanted that and said, no, actually, I was wrong about that. And there is a mission. So as a management consultant or business strategist, business school student, whatever you want to call it, I think profit is somewhere on the objectives of any organization. And then it's a question of balance, whether they have other missions and objectives above and beyond that. Patagonia is one that people like to cite, for example, that has other purposes and missions in the way they do their business.
Well, that's modern day cause marketing.
Okay.
Tom's shoes, buy one, give one away.
Right.
I mean, but now we're at a point where Breyers is making ice cream made of plastic. So seriously, Breyers not a sponsor, folks. All right. Final question, loaded question. They're all loaded questions, but again, we agree on everything. What happens in a scenario where Open Cancer AI does its job? The intervention is there. Some magic unicorn shit happens. They know what to do. But at the end of the day, whatever is agreed upon with that oncologist, insurance says, go fuck yourself. Can AI help you get out of that one day?
Yeah. So I have a presentation which I should share with you on the question of access. It's my current passion. And the argument goes that as the world as care becomes increasingly personalized, we have more diagnostic information. We have more AI figuring out tailored solutions unique to each patient. As personalization increases, which it will, and which is one of the missions of healthcare, but has been in competition with operational excellence, which is consistency, reliability, standards, low cost. There's going to be increasingly, patients are going to find out that the best thing for them is not in the standard, and therefore the guardrails will go up. And you won't be able to get a doctor to prescribe it. You won't be able to get money to pay for it. And you won't be able to access the drugs. And the system is actually designed to do that.
Yep.
Because what you're trying to get is, yes, it was successful in lung cancer, but you have prostate cancer and it wasn't designed for prostate cancer. So what are you trying to do? That's not in the standards. And so one of the interesting things in what we're working on is what's called agentic AI. This is the buzz today in today's world with AI.
Agentic means what?
An agent works on your behalf.
Oh, agent. Okay.
Agentic agent. So an agent works on your behalf. So let's suppose you need to go back to the insurance company and you need to contest that they denied your claim for getting paid for something. There's a process for challenging that. And you've probably heard this. It happens with people who get parking tickets and whatever. And then there's their AI agents that'll go out and then contest it for you. That same thing can happen for you and you're contesting the denial of coverage from your insurance company. And you can also go out and look for philanthropic options. You can also go look out for other ways because you're basically just trying to get access to your treatment and getting paid for it. And there are multiple avenues. If you could program you can imagine there are specialists that do this for a whole living, right?
Right.
Now, if you automated all that, that becomes the push of a button for anybody to go take advantage of it. And the same idea gets applied. There's something like an N of 1 clinical trial. And the reason any doctor can get an N of 1 clinical trial for you or me, but it's like 6 or 8 hours. There is a process. The FDA has it. You can go through it, but it's like 6 to 8 hours of administrative overhead.
But at the end of the day, we all agree that insurance shouldn't be your doctor. Your doctor should be your doctor. You should be able to have a human conversation with your doctor. And all this entirety is evidence that it's all just fucked up and we shouldn't need it at all. Period. Okay. Are you familiar with my lightning round?
I should be, but no.
Okay. So what I do is I actually use AI on this show in my limited ability to understand it without Skynet killing us in 10 years. And I feed it information about my guests, along with a bit of an oral op-ed about my guests and why I care about them. And then I ask it one question. If you, Brad Power, were a Netflix series, what 3 pop culture figures would embody your character? And you are, drumroll please, Doc Brown from Back to the Future. Brilliant, relentless, slightly allergic to normal procedures, and convinced the right technical intervention can alter a disastrous timeline. You have the same give me the data, the machine, the one shot at changing the outcome energy. You are Lisa Simpson with an XY chromosome, earnest, brainy, morally annoyed, and doomed to explain the obvious to rooms full of adults who should already know better. The saxophone becomes tumor sequencing, Springfield General never stood a chance. And you're Jimmy McNulty from The Wire. You know the character?
I don't.
I've given you homework. The system keeps telling him to accept the file as written. He keeps staring at the file and saying the file smells wrong. Brad has the cleaner, Boston consultant version of that same refusal.
I love those.
So congratulations. You are Doc Brown, Jimmy McNulty, and a Y chromosome, Lisa Simpson.
Yeah. I like the Matt Gehring connection.
Very nice. Very nice. All right. Brad Power is the founder of, well, actually, I have the Open Cancer AI. What's the other one called?
Cancer Patient Lab.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Brad Power, my dear friend Brad Power. By the way, he's like 6'30". Enjoy your height. Founder of the Cancer Patient Lab and Open Cancer AI. Link in the episode notes. Enjoy exploring what Skynet can't really kill is our relentless pursuit of fucking back. Thank you, Brad.
Thank you.
Out of Patience with Matthew Zachary is a production of Matthew Zachary Worldwide. The executive producer is Matthew Zachary. It is mixed and edited by Kyle Moore. If you like the show, ratings and reviews are always welcome wherever you get your podcasts. If you have guest suggestions or would like to learn more about sponsorship opportunities, email podcast@matthewzachary.com. For more information about Matthew Zachary and Matthew Zachary Worldwide, visit matthewzachary.com.